We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist, Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's Friday. Congratulations. You made it all the way through the Monday through Friday grind, 9 to 5, heading into an Easter weekend. Again, congratulations. Thanks for joining us today. It is April 3rd, 2026, and today we're going to get into the NASA launch that just happened a couple of days ago. Everybody's MAGA Doppler excited about it. Also, there's a new plan afoot to open the Department of Homeland Security. We're going to be arguing about birthright citizenship in front of the Supreme Court. The FBI covered up for the January 5th/6th pipe bomber. A new narrative has emerged about the kinetic activity. Definitely not a war. How dare you call me a stewardess? I'm a flight progress coordinator in Iran. And also, artificial intelligence is making people delusional. So let's get after it. You know, I have this show titled Agitprop, the manipulation that goes on, the propaganda, the narrative that you're seeing there. And in the interest of doing the exact opposite here on the AM Rad Pod, let me put all my cards on the table, guys. This is not happening live. I had to record today's show, so if the sweet meteor of death does happen to strike on a Friday, I'm sorry I couldn't report on it. I had to pre-record because this weekend is my eldest son's birthday, and we're going to go take him down south to go do some birthday stuff. Guys, we're taking him iguana hunting. It's an actual thing. Thank God for the land of milk and honey that is Florida. It should be a fun time, but I want to let you all know there. So if my information that I'm providing to you is not necessarily timely, that's the reason. We are not live, but we will be lively. And I want to go back a couple days, though, because in the land of milk and honey that is Florida, we are privileged to have access on the East Coast, on the Space Coast, to watch launches from Cape Canaveral a couple times a week. We take advantage of it. It's really fun. And then there was this new wrinkle that developed this week. NASA is sending some astronauts to the moon, and we got lots of video footage of it. I want to start it off with this video that comes from NASA and the launch of the Artemis II rocket.
10, 9, 8, 7, RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
AMT high.
On time passing 30 seconds into the flights. Integrity passes the alternate MECO. Target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the four main engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than...
Pretty cool stuff. I mean, look, full disclosure, I watched it from my driveway. Again, land of milk and honey. But I got to be honest, guys. I see them all the time, and that was way less impressive than what you see from SpaceX. Now, where does the Agitprop come in? It's NASA. It's America, baby. We won the space race. We got to the moon. And please, please, for all that is good and holy, especially on an Easter weekend, don't talk to me about how we never went to the moon and the earth is flat. Let's just go with the narrative right now for the comparison purposes that I want to make today. We got to hype everybody up, right? We're sending those astronauts back to the moon for reasons. But the general reason is so that everybody can feel awesome, pat themselves on the back, wave some pom-poms in the air, pass out some helmet stickers, get some really cool video footage. But I got a couple of comments here. The launch was supposed to happen at 6:24 p.m. Eastern time. It didn't happen until 6:35. You know who doesn't miss their launch window by 11 minutes? SpaceX. Every single time, right on the nose. But it's the government. Come on, good enough for government work. So they got up there. What was the reason for the delay? I mean, you could see from the image there. I think I still even have a still of it. I mean, the weather was perfect. It was spectacular. There's not a cloud in the sky. You could view this. I live about 60 miles away, and it was as clear as could be, high definition. So, pray tell, why did the American government's space program fail to launch on time? Actually, delay. I mean, they give you a window, but your expectation is at the beginning of the window is when they go 3, 2, 1 and launch, and they send that missile out into the stratosphere. It didn't happen though. 11-minute delay. Well, there were a couple last minute hiccups. One was sensors in the spacecraft's waste management system. Guys, they installed a toilet because the American government just can't wait to show you how awesome they are and to do things that are uber expensive for $23 million. Now, it's a pretty cool toilet. Apparently, it's got some sort of air ventilation that not just sucks your business out, but it sucks the smell out. So maybe that could be a future innovation. And it is, after all, the justification that we hear for spending so much money in the space program was that, oh, look, we got all these great future innovations out of it. Look, we have Tang now. It's all great. It's awesome. I don't think I know of really anything else other than Tang that we can say was derivative of the space program that we use every day. And we don't use Tang. But $23 million for a toilet, and there was a sensor that messed up on it. So one of the 4 astronauts had to actually become a plumber and fix the toilet on the spacecraft. Then there were some other things that they don't seem like they're really that big of a deal. The flight termination system, which allows the guys that are on mission control to say, hey, we got problems. We're going to jettison this entire thing, push the astronauts out because we don't want them to explode. There was communication problems with it, and they had to lean back on the old shuttle software, do an update or a downgrade in order to get the communications up. And then there was also the launch abort system. Abort, like hit the button so we don't do this because there's a problem. And it overheated. And NASA said, no big deal. Who cares about aborting this mission? If there's a problem, it won't interfere with the launch when everybody's watching, but maybe later on down the road, at least the visuals won't be there for the catastrophe that could be afoot. So they were able to overcome that, or at least ignore it and keep that thing duct taped together as long as possible to get out. And look, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was halfway expecting this thing to explode over our head, because it's not from SpaceX. It's not from private industry. They didn't even return the boosters down like SpaceX does, which is pretty cool. We've shown the videos of it before. The boosters return, they get reused. What does NASA do with the money that the American government steals? I mean, taxes from you, so that they can do a PR about how great America is. We're sending the astronauts to the place that they've already been before. Well, they just leave them in the ocean. They're not usable ever again. So just more money that gets wasted. And what is the purpose of us sending astronauts to the moon, beyond the moon? That's the mission. They're going further away than any astronaut ever has. It's just to get distance, to get the odometer stretched out a little bit further. Well, we've been reliably informed by our betters within the government that the purpose for this mission is so awesome. They want to have a non-American astronaut. They want to have a Black astronaut. They have a woman astronaut go out in space so that it could be unprecedented. We're going to shatter the glass ceiling with a rocket going through it. What else are they going to actually do when they're up there, though? They're going to see what the physical consequences are on the body for having traveled that far away, with full knowledge that no bodies are going to travel that far away anymore. So it seems like unnecessary knowledge that we don't necessarily need. And then the other thing was, when we get far past the moon, not just close to the moon, we're going to get a different perspective of the backside of the moon because we'll be so far away. It'll be way better than it was, which to me is sort of like saying, I know I'm sitting at the 50-yard line on the first row at the Super Bowl, but think how awesome it would be if I was in the Goodyear blimp. It would be a much better view. I could learn so much more about the game of football if I was thousands of feet in the air. No different at all. And this entire mission, well, Artemis 2 specifically, is costing you, the American taxpayer, $4 billion. But the entire Artemis program is running up there around $90 billion. So essentially, for a pump up program, right? But putting out the cool videos that we can see on social media that everybody loves. And God bless America. Look at our technological might. We are just the best. We are MAGA Doppler awesome right now. It costs about $90 billion. Now, is that a really great way to triage our problem? I think people were kind of down and dour on the American government and country as a whole when we had the Biden auto pen administration, right? I mean, opinions of us were kind of on the decline, very Jimmy Carter-esque malaise. Could achievements in space bring up our spirits? Certainly. Is that the best thing to do, though? Is that the best way that we could be stewards of the money that the government stole, I mean, taxed from you? I would contend not. I would contend that the American people elected the Trump administration in 2024 on a mandated a couple of things, one of which was mass deportations, which aren't free. Would you have a better or stronger opinion of America as a whole if we were achieving the mission on ejecting 30, 40, 50 million illegal aliens rather than sending 4 people to the moon? Were they not even going to land? They're just going to come home? I think yes. I think this is all agitprop. In fact, I know they're not being good stewards of the money of the American people surrendered via gunpoint when you were robbed by the American government, because I had to dig through the archives a little bit, but I think I found a piece that would be relevant to our discussion here. And this comes from the Politico from about a year ago. This is all about the plan that was proposed. Now, I said SpaceX is way better than NASA because it's not government. Well, the same sort of logic might apply when it comes to mass deportations. And there's some sort of hiccups that you might have, some speed bumps along the way when it comes to deputizing people in the private sector. Do we want to privatize police? Maybe have some constitutional concerns there. But I don't really care about constitutional concerns as it relates to people who aren't citizens. So, from Politico, the headline here, again, this article's about Eric Prince, founder of Blackwater, so he's mean. Headline, Trump allies circulate mass deportation plan calling for processing camps and a private citizen army. Well, there's a couple of pieces that went into this. I did a little bit of digging on it. But what Eric Prince and his ilk actually pitched to the Trump White House was a proposal to carry out mass deportations via the private sector, private military, the BlackRock guys. They're going to attract those dudes. We're going to get it done. They wanted to deport 12 million people in 2 years being just in time for the midterms, where you probably galvanize the folks to go out there and pull the lever for the Republican Party and whoever Donald Trump gave his blessing to, because the Trump administration, if they were deporting 500,000 illegal aliens a month, which would add up to 12 million, and they did that over the course of 24 months, 2 years, I think the American people will be pretty pumped up about that. I mean, it's not 50 million, but it's well on your way. It's about a quarter of it. That's really good. So why wouldn't you opt for that? I mean, it's a pretty big undertaking, 500,000. What would you have to do? When Eric Prince and his colleagues, compatriots, sort of came up with this proposal, and they say that there was this document that says they want to keep pace with the Trump deportations. It would require a 600% increase in activity to what was going on at the time. We got to ramp it up. You're not going to have the manpower or the resources in order to do it. You're going to have to send people to an academy down at FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia. And the time for them to matriculate through that training is going to take 4, 5, 6 months. And we're going to be so far beyond the curve that we're not going to be able to get it done. We're not going to get to the 12 million deportations. So Eric Prince submits a proposal for $25 billion. 25 billion will get rid of 12 million illegal aliens. We just spent more than triple on that to send 4 people on a joyride around the moon so they could take pictures from further away from the moon than the astronauts did in the 60s. Agitprop. Nobody's actually addressing the problems that the American people foresee and are experiencing right now. Now, one of the experiences that people are having right now that we've concentrated on this week is Department of Homeland Security being shut down. How is it impacting your lives other than the deportations that you're expecting to happen and are not happening enough, but they're still happening because ICE and Customs and Border Protection are funded by the one big beautiful bill? Department of Homeland Security is partially shut down. Where do you feel it? Well, when you go to fly, you don't get groped by the person wearing the blue t-shirt. They don't feel around your crotch or take pictures of your naked body with the scanner and then snicker with their friends. But there's now a plan afoot. The president has endorsed it from the U.S. Senate, led by the stalwart of conservatism, John Thune. From the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness, Trump endorses Republican plan to end DHS shutdown. Well, that sounds good. We don't want to have entire government agencies shut down, or if you're at Real Steve Friend or you're somebody who is a fan of the American Radicals podcast, available all weekdays on Rumble and YouTube and later at Spotify at AmRadPod, you're probably okay with us shutting down the Department of Homeland Security because it doesn't impact our lives that much. It would save lots of money. We wouldn't have to have so much of our money stolen, I mean taxed, in order to fund it. And essentially nothing that's going on there is comporting with their pesky, dusty documents that the American people signed onto with our social compact that says we want certain things from the government. We want deportations. We want border sovereignty. But everything else, no, I really don't need you involved in groping me when I go to fly. I don't need you looking for jurisdiction to the news that I consume to see what you can and can't censor so that I will say the things that comport with what the government deems to be right thing, right? I don't want any of that. But unfortunately, it looks like we're kind of outvoted. So the American people want the Department of Homeland Security back online. So there's been this new plan that's been circulating, and the House is kind of hardcore against it. The Senate, because they tend to be even less conservative than the House, which is saying something because the House is functionally communist at this point. The Senate has this idea. They say, hey, look, let's just pull out all of the funding fighting that we're doing on ICE and Customs and Border Protection. The Democrats want massive reform there. They want those guys to basically not do the job that the law requires them to do in order to get funding. So we will be funding something that is not doing anything at all, like most government organizations. So the Republicans have an idea. Hey, we will divest ICE and Customs and Border Protection, and then we will fund the rest of the Department of Homeland Security. We don't need to worry about it because ICE and Customs and Border Protection are already funded by the one big beautiful bill. It's genius. We can get it open. We won't be blamed for the air travel anymore. So we probably will only lose 45 seats in the House rather than 90, right? This is the thinking that went into it. And I'm sure that the advisors that spoke to the president said, you got to do it. We got to get it done. We're going to get mollywopped so badly. Maybe we can recoup a little bit of our electoral losses if we reopen Department of Homeland Security and stop seeing in the media report every single day the days that it's been partially shut down and how it's a record. It's the longest shutdown ever in history. Here's the problem, and this is where the Agitprop goes, because what I've laid out kind of makes sense. We're going to get funding for every one of those other little arms that everybody wants, except for the people who watch the American Radicals podcast. And we already have funding for what we do want. So winning all around. No, it's propaganda. It's Agitprop. Beyond just the cave that it represents, where the Republicans just they can't summon the testicular fortitude to say, you're damn right we shut down the government because it doesn't do a darn thing for the American people. What are you going to do about it? We're in charge now. You want to go vote for something different? That'll happen in November. But right now, the American people sent us here to actually rein in the government. So that's what we're going to do. But that would be a principled stand. I mean, integrity is only a problem if you got it. So they cave. They give the Democrats everything they want because they think, oh, on the back end, what we're really going to get is the funding for immigrations and customs enforcement and customs and border protection. So We're winning there. The deportations are going to continue, even though they're nowhere near the level that they need to be. The American people will still be okay with us. Here's the giant flaw. Well, they probably don't see it as a flaw, but this is what they're trying to slip past you because it seems reasonable, but it's not. This comes from Cato Institute. Headline: Here's how the administration plans to spend the largest immigration enforcement funding surge in history. And this is all about the funds that were downstream of the One Big Beautiful Bill. $190 billion went to Department of Homeland Security. 75 went to ICE. 65 went to Customs and Border Protection. So ICE got 7x what it normally gets in a year. Customs and Border Protection got 4x what it gets in a typical year. But because there's no comprehensive public accounting of how the One Big Beautiful Bill funds were being obligated or spent, what wound up happening was our arm of government, the branch of government that's supposed to have the power of the purse, they passed the One Big Beautiful Bill with no accountability. So now those agencies have those funds and are completely at the discretion of the president. We gave them the money, spend it how you want. No sort of line items on where it has to go. And we're going to be diligent and scrupulous and conduct some sort of a pre-audit and demand that you spend the money how we actually allocate it. Nope, we're just going to give you a giant pool of money. That's like a rich person who dies and in their will, they just hand a giant pool of money to their 19-year-old who's addicted to cocaine. Do you think he's going to put it into his Roth IRA? Do you think he'll call up a financial advisor and discuss the various options that he might have in mutual funds? Or is he just going to blow it all on blow? The latter, of course. And secondly, it's so short-sighted that it doesn't foresee something like a different president. So part of the negotiation that's going on in the Senate right now about funding Department of Homeland Security is they want to give this reconciliation process a try to fund immigration, custom enforcement, and Customs and Border Protection, and they want to give them a giant pot of money for the next 3 years. Or in Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, he wants to give it to him for 10 years with zero accountability. Now, I like mass deportations. I like the guys who are assigned to do the mass deportations, who are legally required to do the mass deportations. I would like them to do it. But I'm not stupid enough to think that there's always going to be a president who runs and gets elected on a mandate of mass deportations. Maybe we'll get President American Psycho Gavin Newsom in a couple of years. Perish the thought, but it's looking more and more likely every single day. And what do you think Gavin Newsom's going to do as president of the United States when he has all of that money in those agencies at his discretion? Do you think he's going to contribute it towards deporting illegal aliens? Or is he going to reassign ICE? I mean, there's certainly no precedent for us doing that ever before, right? Like, oh, that's right. That's right. We sent them to the airport to give out bottles of water. What went on with the FAMs, the Federal Air Marshals? They were an element of Department of Homeland Security during the Biden administration. They went down to the southern border and made sandwiches and handed them to illegal aliens crossing over. What's to stop Gavin Newsom from doing the exact same thing with those agencies that have no oversight, no accountability for how they spend the money? Just, Mr. President, what do you want this private army to do for you? This agitprop is dangerous. All right, let's stay on immigration stuff, but I want to talk about the discussions that are going on right now, the arguments in front of the Supreme Court, and the spin and the narrative that go into that. So I saw this piece over at Washington Post, and it is simultaneously wanting your eyes to roll out of your head because it confirms everything that I've ever said, which is probably mostly why I want to bring it to your attention. And then also it's kind of funny. So, headline: this 5-month-old was born on U.S. soil. She may never be a citizen. Don't you feel bad for her? Now, they shot up this histrionics, right? They had the story already pre-written. They got to find the most sympathetic case that they can. What this woman, and we don't know her name because she's an illegal alien. She's the mother that you see the top of her head, if there is in fact a photo of her. She came to America in 2000. She's been here for 26 years. Her mother brought her here when she was a child. Through no fault of her own. Her mother was an illegal alien, was seeking asylum, and they just didn't get around to showing up for their asylum court hearing. So they didn't show up. So then there was a deportation order put out for them. Do you think they ever intended to show up for their asylum hearing? I don't know what was going on in Colombia in 2000. I didn't really dig into the details, but I don't think there was some sort of a massive humanitarian crisis that would have necessitated them arriving. They said it was just kind of like rough down there. They wanted to find something different. So they came to America and snuck across the border. So she's been in the country for 26 years. She's a DACA recipient, deferred action for childhood arrivals. That's the policy that Barack Obama pushed through, where he let 500,000 illegal aliens who were brought through no fault of their own as children just remain in the country. Ollie, oxen free. It's just the president calling the shots because we elect a dictator every 4 years. Doesn't actually go with anything that's written down in law, doesn't go with anything that's written down in our Constitution. The president just did it and nothing happened. No co-equal branches of government trying to push back on it. So Barack Obama, the communist that he is, did that. She got it. She's been in the country. And then she also married somebody. She's married. You see that guy there. If you happen to be watching us, I'll throw it back up there. It's the couple, happy couple kissing their brand new baby. The dude with the backwards ball cap and the 5 o'clock shadow. Did she find an American? Did she assimilate into the culture? And just so hard right now. I mean, you wouldn't want to break up a family, specifically when one of them is American. Wouldn't you rather just keep the family together? And she's assimilated. She's a contributing member of our society. No, she found another illegal alien to get hitched to. He's from Argentina. Why did he come here? I mean, was there a war? Was there political persecution? Was he speaking out against despotism? No. How do they describe it in the Washington Post? Because democracy dies in darkness. They say he was fleeing economic turmoil. He just wanted to make some money, so he came here. So we've got 2 illegal aliens popping out a kid who's an illegal alien. That's the way it works. Now, how do they set it up? Washington Post wants you to know that she voted for Donald Trump. Can you believe the betrayal? She supported Donald Trump because he's conservative. She has those beliefs. And she got really upset when he started talking about ending birthright citizenship, because even though he said it on the campaign trail, she didn't think that was actually going to happen. Well, I mean, in her defense, most politicians just lie on the campaign trail, so hardly want to fault her on that one. But when the president followed through on a campaign promise, it devastated her. So now they're really concerned about birthright citizenship. Now, what is this? I'm not going to take the Washington Post's word for it, their explanation for it, because they give you a little bit of facts, but a lot of editorializing. It's all about the 14th Amendment. It says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are U.S. citizens. That's what WAPO wants you to know. And there was a Supreme Court case that happened like 30 years later, around like 1898, and it basically said that if you get across the border and you land here and you pop out a kid, that kid's a citizen. I'd be a little more forgiving of that policy, which I don't want to forgive at all, if we didn't have the robust, we'll label it, characterize it, welfare system that we have right now. But certainly in 1898, we didn't. Shoot, I think that was like McKinley era. He was coming off Grover Cleveland, the veto president, who said, we're not spending money on anything. So we didn't have the spending levels that we do now, the general welfare interpreted to be Obama phones and free health care and child care for every single person. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison. Now, what Washington Post wants to point out is that roughly 250,000 kids would be born without citizenship in the U.S. each year if Trump's order is upheld, which would mean 5 million kids by 2045, over the next 20 years. Well, that's patently ridiculous. If we didn't have birthright citizenship, people wouldn't come here to plop out kids. So that number is erroneous. It's assuming that the illegals would still come over at the exact same rate and still have the exact same amount of kids when they knew full well that they wouldn't get all those welfare bennies. So that's not really going to hold water for me. Now, where is the argument? And what is the right side of the argument? So I saw this piece over at Epoch Times, and they go into a couple different arguments pertaining to birthright citizenship, which again is from the 14th Amendment, which we passed in this country after the Civil War with slavery. It was a passed amendment to our Constitution that said, if you're a slave in this country, you and your kids get to be citizens because you were brought here through no fault of your own. You're part of our social fabric. But it's been very broadly overinterpreted right now. So the actual language from our pesky, dusty document is all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now that brings up a fundamental debate because the communists argue that, well, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It's very lawyery language, subject to the jurisdiction. That just means that you got to obey the law. If you're obeying the law, then you're a citizen. That's the argument that gets made. Doesn't matter how you got here, you're subject to our jurisdiction. You have to follow all the laws, which is ridiculous because if you come to our country illegally, you have not followed the law. So I don't know how that argument is strong at all. Now, the other side, the side that wants the birthright citizenship to end via the executive order that President Trump put out, says it's an allegiance to the country, right? You're not just passing on through. There's a reason that if you're a diplomat, if you're a French ambassador, and you bring your wife, which you're allowed to do because you're a French ambassador, and your wife's pregnant, she has a baby, little Jacques. Little Jacques is not an American citizen. Both parents are French. He's a French citizen. He can go back home with them. If you're an illegal alien, you have no right to be here, then the kid you punch out isn't a citizen. It's really not that complicated because one of the individuals who was responsible for drafting the 14th Amendment when they were debating it and writing about it was this guy that came from Iowa. His name was James Wilson. Here's his quote. Every person born in the United States is a natural born citizen of such states except children born on our soil to temporary sojourners. Temporary sojourners? You mean people that aren't permanently here, like illegal aliens or diplomats? So we're pretty clear on that. We're pretty clear that birthright citizenship via the 14th Amendment did not mean that if you came up from Colombia or Argentina fleeing economic turmoil, that you get to have a kid who is the beneficiary of the social safety net programs that have been implemented over the last 130 years in this country. Pretty straightforward, but the narrative attached to it. I mean, how dare you? She was a Trump voter. She came here through no fault of her own. She is entitled to give her kid a social security number and all of the bennies attached to it. Do you really want to leave this girl? Do you want her to be deported from the country? She was born in America. How could she possibly go to Colombia? She's not Colombia. She can't go to Argentina. She's not Argentina. She'll be a person without a country. It's pretty sympathetic for somebody who cares. And that's not me. Get out of my country. You don't belong here. It's not my problem. You know whose problem it is? It's your mom's problem. It's your dad's problem. They created the situation where their child is someone without a country. Not my problem. You gots to go. Trail of Tears style. You're young enough that I don't have to push you down there in a wheelchair. Trail of Tears, march to the southern border, to the Rio Grande, across which I put every 400 yards an 18-year-old kid atop a Humvee with a 50 cal, and we say, get out of here, and we're not giving you a bottle of water like the Department of Homeland Security wants to give people waiting in lines at airports. Now, that's pretty cruel, but let me find something that's a little more cruel. And we're on the subject of the narrative. I saw this over from Daily Mail. We're going to completely reorient here, shift some gears. You want to talk about narrative? Dang. From the science section of the Daily Mail, headline, having children doesn't make you happy. Becoming a parent provides no boost to well-being, study claims, but it does ruin your relationships. So this is kind of dark, but again, because they're communists, they give away the game here. So from this study that the Daily Mail likes to cite in this piece, there's hardly any difference in happiness levels or life satisfaction between parents and non-parents. It reveals that becoming parents actually triggers a decline in relationship satisfaction. Well, come on. You have some little ones run around that are awake all the time. You're just super nervous they're going to put their finger in a light socket, or you're trying to plan their birthday party, going iguana hunting. Like that creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So you could see that maybe taking a toll on a relationship. Date night is much harder when you try to find a babysitter. So again, that's from the Institute of Very Obvious Things. But the way that they give this away, and I think that we get to the crux of the actual findings of this statement, is the team said that there's a positive link between parenthood and happiness, but it might actually be down to your relationship status. People who are in a relationship tend to be better off emotionally compared to those who are single, and they are also more likely to have children. So, does it erode your relationship? I mean, maybe, but what did we really just prove? Well, everybody likes the situation that they're in, by and large, or at least they rationalize it in their head. I don't want kids. I don't have kids. I'm happy not having kids. Well, have you ever tried having kids? You might be happier. And those who have kids actually have a comparison between before and after. So who are you more likely to accept the knowledge of? Now, might they be lying because they had kids because they don't want to say, kind of hate them and that makes me sound like an evil person? Possibly. But what we really find is that we have immature people and mature people. And mature people say, my relationship could be a little bit happier with my wife, but ultimately, having kids was the most important thing. And then you have the immature people that say, I don't want anything to do with that. Your soul goes to die. So all this study essentially did was prove things that the Institute of Obvious Things like to say, is that mature people get married, make other people, and that's the best thing you can actually do. All right, we're going to wrap things up here for the week. I have to churn through a couple of different pieces that I want to get to on the narrative stuff. And I would be derelict in my duty as a podcast host, a professional podcast host, if I didn't weigh in on a couple things related to Department of Justice and FBI. So the big news that came out yesterday was that Pam Bondi, Attorney General, former Attorney General, she was fired by Donald Trump. And now we're waiting to find out who is going to become the next Attorney General. Todd Blanche, deputy, has taken over in earnestness. We need to get a replacement just because Todd Blanche is awful. So one of the complaints, or among the top complaints that the president had for Pam Bondi, was her handling of the Epstein files. That could go either way. Maybe she didn't bury it hard enough. Maybe she didn't become transparent enough. We don't really know. She also had some shortcomings as a communicator, which I have an accompanying video for us. And let me see. Give me a second. I got to pull this one up because it's a classic. Did you guys know that the Dow is at 50,000? Pam Bondi.
You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. All they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader.
Yeah, that was really, really awkward. I mean, I have to appreciate it being somebody who's sitting alone in a room right now, staring into a lens, the sheer inability to communicate a plethora of thoughts that were going through her head. That was just an atomic failure, a galactic failure by someone who's, hovering around 100 IQ. She blamed Jim Jordan for that, by the way, which I do like and appreciate, because Jim, spelled with a G, deserves all the blame, even if he doesn't deserve the blame. She was a terrible attorney general. She was a terrible attorney general from the very outset with all of the Epstein stuff. She had a generational opportunity to actually defang and de-weaponize the Department of Justice. And then when she crapped the bed on the Bindergate story, where she didn't wind up turning over anything, her report back on Fox News when she was auditioning for her contributorship, that I'm sure she'll get in very due course, was, well, I had a mole report back to me that somebody at the United States Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York, they're actually hiding it there. Madam Attorney General, former Attorney General, a mole reported to you about somebody who works for you? So one of your employees had to inform on the other employees? So you never actually wrestled away control of your entire agency. And then you couldn't decide what to do. So you shut down the Epstein case. And then that got rid of the entire excuse so that you had to not reveal anything about it because the ongoing investigation at that point was over. You had no excuse. And still you resisted and resisted and resisted. And then that forced actual legislation, bipartisan, almost unanimous through both houses of Congress and signed immediately by the President of the United States that you had to turn over all of the information on Epstein, which you didn't do for over a month. And then when you finally turned it over, you said, that's everything. Spoiler, it's not. You just pallet dumped millions of documents. All you had to do was produce a certain amount from the very first day. Could have been every 30 days, every 90 days, a little bit, explain what's going on there. It would have gone so long, you would have had so much grace. But that would have actually required some forethought. Instead, you just sat there, enjoyed the accoutrements of your office, and then when you were pushed for it, you started screaming and doing your MAGA land acknowledgement, claiming Donald Trump is the greatest. He didn't like it, and now you got to go. So we'll see who's there to replace. I'm hearing rumblings. It could be Ken Paxton from Texas. It could be Lee Zeldin from New York. Who knows? We will see and report on it as it comes out. If it happens to come out today, which is Friday, April 3rd, I'm sorry, guys. Again, I'm going iguana hunting. All right. Let's move over now to one of the sub-agencies that we want to weigh in on. And this isn't my story, but I do want to comment on it. This comes from the Washington Examiner. Some revelations from some buddies of mine, Joe Hanneman, Steve Baker, formerly of The Blaze. Both of them have now departed that media outlet because of their lack of spine, their spines of jello, their failure to stand by their journalists reporting on the January 5th/6th pipe bomber. This comes from Washington Examiner. Kalen Deese, headline, FBI investigated former Capitol Police officer in the January 6th pipe bomb case, filings say. So what do we know from this and from other reporting that went on? Shawnee Kirkhoff, former Capitol Police officer, now force protection person over at the Central Intelligence Agency. She was a person of interest who was actually investigated by the FBI, did a polygraph and failed it when she was asked, did you plant the pipe bombs? So that's not good. The FBI began investigating, questioning, and covertly surveilling her. And then the former co-deputy director of the FBI, when it was reported by my buddies, Steve and Joe, he took to social media and said that the prior person of interest is grossly and inaccurate and serves only to mislead the public. But they didn't close out the case on her for several months after that. So the FBI's got some explaining to do, and that includes former co-deputy directors, where it looks like the timeline essentially went like this. Shawnee Kirkhoff was identified. Well, actually, before that, before Shawnee Kirkhoff was identified as a likely pipe bombing subject, the FBI was going to say training exercise. That got debunked or pre-bunked. Then Shawnee Kirkhoff gets identified by Joe Hanneman, Steve Baker, and then they start the wheels, and the FBI mobilizes all resources to take the information that, according to them, they already had. No new information. Information that they had had in their possession for the last 5 years, and came to the conclusion that an autistic My Little Pony fan, having never changed any habit of life, any pattern whatsoever, somehow used his own cell phone and car and credit card and dropped pipe bombs in the Capitol. And they put Brian Cole Jr., an innocent man, in a cage just to avoid getting scooped, narrative style, agitprop style, by Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman. And Brian Cole remains in a cage. And anybody who spoke out about that was persona non grata. That could be Steve Baker, where they tried to pull in with Joe Kent. It could be yours truly. Real Steve Friend came out and said, if you put an innocent person in prison, you deserve to go to prison. That was characterized as a threat to the life of the director of the FBI. So I got fake rehired so that I could be fired, not before they could tell the media about it and stop me from ever having gainful employment again. So there will be more information coming out. I'm in contact with Joe and Steve, and they are chomping at the bit to reveal things that the Blaze held back from them. And hopefully the Blaze winds up chapter 11 and those guys go off into their own endeavors independently to some Woodward and Bernstein status. All right, I've got two more that I want to get to, and we're covering down as we're wrapping things up on some big issues. And on the subject of propaganda and narratives, we got to talk briefly about the would-be, what do they call it? Kinetic operation, definitely not a war that's happening. We've got a new narrative, guys. Why are we dropping warheads on foreheads in Iran? Well, the Secretary of State's got it for us. This is a former senator from my home state, now current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. What are we doing? Dang it, this thing is not going to work, is it? Son of a. All right, well, unless I can get it queued up. No, I'm not going to worry about it. What Secretary of State Rubio wound up proposing is that Iran was in the process of duplicating the North Korean model of self-defense. And that is they were building up their conventional military. So the United States had to take out their conventional military, and that, in effect, was taking out their nuclear weapons. Now, let's just rehash some of the narratives that we've been given, some of the agitprop that's been proposed to justify the actions that were taken over the last month and a few days. One, we had Iran's an imminent threat to the United States. An imminent threat to the continental United States? No, but to the resources that we have in the area that we put there. So very much like the car was driving and the police officer stood in front of it while it was driving and then said, well, the car is going to run me over, so I better smoke the driver. So that doesn't hold water. Then it was, well, we got to take out their nukes, but we did that last year, so that didn't hold water. Well, then we have to take out their short range and medium range ballistic missiles, which we did. And then we got to take out their Navy, which they've told us is at the bottom of the ocean right now. We got to do a decapitation strike, but we don't want to do regime change because that sounds really bad. So we're hoping that the populace, the Iranian people, will actually do the regime change for us. And hopefully it'll be somebody that we like. And ultimately that'll lead us to leaving boots on the ground there to support them. But again, that sounds like a forever war. And then it was, well, we've always been at war. Read my lips. No new taxes. This isn't new taxes. This is just an increase of old taxes. Read my lips. No new wars. This is just a continuation of a war we've had for half a century. Again, that agitprop ain't going to work. So now they're trotting out the new one. Marco Rubio says, we have to take out the conventional military, and in essence, that is taking out their nuclear capabilities, which they're ascribing to get. They don't really have them. So if I go with an analogy, we're going to stop the bank robbery from happening. Well, in order for the bank robbery to happen, then the bank robbers are going to have to do a bunch of stuff. Well, one of them is they're going to have a getaway car, right? The getaway vehicle. In order to have a getaway vehicle, they're going to have to be able to drive. So in order to be able to drive, they're going to have to learn to drive. They're going to have to get a driver's license. You know what we should do? We should stop driver's ed in high school, because then the bank robbers won't know how to drive away in a couple years when they want to rob the bank. Not going to work. It's pure agitprop. All right, one more. And this is artificial intelligence. And let's punch this out. It's kind of boring to look at, guys, but I want to give you the skinny on this one, because this one, Skynet, again, is self-aware. This is a study about ChatGPT, one of these chatbots. It is designed to make you delusional. That is what this study actually argues. The paper here pictured, and I will put the link to this, the PDF, in the show notes of the day. It calls it delusional spiraling. You ask the chatbot something and it agrees with you. You ask again, it agrees even harder. And within a few conversations, it can have you believing things that just aren't true. Now, there's some anecdotal evidence. One guy talked to ChatGPT for 300 hours. I guess he didn't have a job. It told him that he had discovered a world-changing math equation, a new formula, and he kept asking it, hey, is this real? Did I really invent it? And ChatGPT said, yep, you did, and he didn't. So a couple of different fixes have been proposed to avoid this, again, delusional spiraling, becoming a crazy person. Of the two, number one, stop the chatbot from lying. Sounds simple enough. But there's two types of lying. There's lies by commission and there's lies by omission. If you tell ChatGPT, don't lie, it can do that. No commission of a lie, no inventing of the story. But it doesn't have to tell you everything. Kind of like the way that propaganda works, right? They tell you true things, but they don't tell you all the things, just what they want you to see. Like, let's launch this missile into outer space. Isn't America great? Don't focus down on how we spent $90 billion to make that happen when SpaceX makes it happen for way less. And that money could have been spent on deporting illegal aliens, which would objectively make your life better. Now, the other one, back to ChatGPT. The other fix, warn users that chatbots are sycophants, that they're going to kiss your butt, like Pam Bondi does when she goes to a congressional hearing. Donald Trump is the most transparent president since ever. And the Dow is at 50,000. It's a sycophant, right? But even a perfectly rational person, let's even presume the president is perfectly rational. I know him. It's a stretch. Everything he says is the greatest and the most and the magnificent. And he's awesome. I get it. But let's just say for a minute, hold still, that Donald Trump is the most rational human being on earth. That sycophancy, it weighs on that guy even. So as long as we have sycophants, and as long as we have those who are willing to omit true facts from you, you could be the most reasonable and rational person, and you are also going to be victimized by the agitprop. So endeavor always to get all the facts. Don't weigh in on something. Think about things rationally, reasonably. Don't react too quickly to them. That's always the best course of action. Slow and steady. And you can win the race, but you're probably not going to win the race against the subject of today's palate cleanse, guys, because the fastest man on earth, to bring it full circle, he went zero gravity. Here's Usain Bolt, today's palate cleanse, racing in 0 Gs. Give it a play. He won. Going away, too. All right, guys. That is going to do us for today and for the whole week on the American Radicals podcast. If you haven't already, do all those things. We appreciate the follows and the subscribes and the shares and the thumbs up and the likes. If you wouldn't mind, head on over to Spotify if you haven't already this week and give us a play there. Help boost that, help us monetize. Hope everybody has a great and safe Easter weekend. And we'll be back here on Monday. Until then, happy Easter.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.